The NBA All-Star break did not move LeBron any closer to making a decision about his future. The 41-year-old veteran, in his NBA record 23rd season, said he has no idea if this will be his final season with the Lakers or if he wants to jump into free agency and finish his career with another team. LeBron is in the final year of a 2-year deal with the Lakers that's paying him $52.6 million. Father Time is knocking on LeBron's door, and he hears those knocks, but there has not been a significant drop in LeBron's performance. Even though injuries this season have sidelined LeBron for 18 games, he's averaging 33 minutes, 22 points, 7.1 assists, and shooting 50% from the floor. He is still one of the NBA's marquee players. LeBron will certainly be quizzed again about his future after the season. The thing to keep on your radar is how different his answer might be. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Hi, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I have some news. The room is full. Our founding members cohort on the art of conversation has begun, and I could not be more energized by the professionals who said yes to mastering the craft. Their dedication to curating great conversations reminds me why I do this work. Now, if you wanted to join us and did not make it in time, I want you to hear this. The next cohort is coming. I do not have the firm dates yet, but I do have a waiting list. And everyone on that list will receive early access and special discounts when enrollment opens. After almost 40 years of interviewing world leaders and cultural icons, I am teaching everything I know. Don't miss your chance to be in the next room. Go to TavisTalks.com and get on the waiting list right now. That's TavisTalks.com. The conversation continues. Will you be part of it?
Yeah, man. Yet our best trained, best educated, best equipped, best prepared troops refuse to fight. Matter of fact, it's safe to say that they would rather switch than fight.
KBLA Talk 1580, where we fight the power every day. Part of our charter around here. And it is Black History Month, as you, I'm pretty sure, know by now. In fact, it's the 17th day of Black History Month, also known as Fat Tuesday. It's also the birthday of Huey P. Newton, and it is the Chinese New Year, Ramadan, a lot going on around in these streets today. I'm excited to welcome on an assistant professor in the Center for the Study of Higher and Post-Secondary Education at the University of Michigan, Marshall Family School of Education. Dr. Charles Davis is an historian. He is also one of the founders of Scholars for Black Lives and a long-time activist ever since his student days as well. Hasn't been that long. Dr. Charles H.F. Davis III, welcome.
Mr. Dominique, how are you? It's great to be here.
I'm blessed. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, all things considered.
Yes, and there's a lot to consider on this Black
There
History Month. There's a lot to consider. We hadn't planned to focus on the Reverend Jesse Jackson, but since he made his transition on yesterday, I was hoping that you would have some words to say about him. I mean, certainly leaving a giant footprint in American politics, history, and civil rights.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually awoke to the news, and so it was one of the first things that I saw this morning. And, in no uncertain terms, Jesse Jackson was one of the most important Black political figures of the 20th century. And there's so many ways that we can talk about his legacy. I remember meeting Reverend Jackson very briefly when I was a student at Florida State University, when he and Reverend Al Sharpton came down to Tallahassee in the wake of the murder of a 13-year-old boy named Martin Lee Anderson, who was killed in a Bay Area boot camp. And so I became very acquainted with his longstanding commitment to not just political work, but also to the support of young people and youth organizers, much of which is indicative of his legacy in Chicago. And so I think, one thing to remember that's really important, I think, about Dr. Jackson, or Reverend Jackson, rather, is his moral and political courage in particular moments in which it was not popular to do that. And so when we think about the tie-ins for the things that are happening today, we can think about his unwavering solidarity with Palestinian self-determination. And so as we're having conversations amongst ourselves in the Black community about what these things have to do with us, that Jackson represents a longstanding tradition of Black and Palestinian solidarity. We can think about, obviously, his 1984 run in the Democratic primary, which laid the predicate then for another Chicagoan to subsequently run and then win, his presidential election and Barack Obama. So there's so much that we could say about Reverend Jackson, and he is a giant and an icon whose legacy is firmly cemented and will be sorely missed.
Yeah, I think within our community, within the Black community, there's always this thread of controversy, partly because of the division, right, when he left the SCLC,
Sure.
the division with Abernathy, partly because of the conspiracy theories surrounding the death of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I'm hoping that we get away from speculation, get away from sort of factionalism, and focus on what the huge legacy, not only in preparing the ground, as you rightly say, for the election of President Barack Obama, but also this idea of what it looks like to have a coalition, a multicultural coalition that is still Black-centered.
Yeah, and I mean, when we think about this, right, important thing about the Rainbow Push Coalition, one of the figures that we've recognized this year in the Black History Matters campaign is Chairman Fred Hampton. And we know that the work of the Black Panther Party in Chicago was instrumental in bringing together people across racial differences, right, and understanding what class solidarity looked like. And so when we think about the Rainbow Push Coalition, not just in its name, but in terms of what it was attempting and ultimately did, is very much connected to the legacy of folks like the Black Panthers, right? And so part of it is to understand, as we say, right, and this in Black Lives Matter Grassroots, that we are but a marker on the long history of political struggle. And so we have to see that these things are connected and that we're building upon and improving upon legacies. And I think most importantly, that none of us engaging in this political work pass any level of purity test when it comes to our politics and our contradictions, right? And so we have to also confront that within the legacies of the people who have laid some of the groundwork that makes our political work today possible.
Right, and not do the job of the ops. Right? Let the ops do the job of the ops, and let us do the job of elevating what deserves to be elevated. I was talking earlier, Dr. Davis, about how I feel like the Reverend Jackson had a special knack for taking progressive and even radical ideas and making them resonate with everyday people who are not political activists or scholars, who are working class people of various ethnicities and backgrounds. And somehow he could talk about something and people would receive it and cheer.
Yeah, I mean, again, part of his legacy is just his rhetorical and oratorical aptitude, right? Very much standing in that King tradition, obviously as a reverend, right? And then sort of the Black radical tradition broadly, but also the Black theological tradition allows him to gain that sort of connectivity. But let's also not be forgetting, sort of where he comes from, right? Like he's born in Greenville, South Carolina, where my family is from, also being from South Carolina, and grows up at a particular time in which he's very much ingratiated in the everydayness of what it means to be a Black person, not dissimilar from his experience in Chicago. And so we need not be surprised that although through political, ascension over time, that ultimately he can return to those roots and did return to those roots in the ways that he discussed and talked about a number of things. And I think that's, again, instructive for how we think about this political moment and the extent to which so many of our political figures are detached and disconnected from everyday people and the struggles that they're going through, much less being able to talk to them on a level that makes sense in ways that aren't trying to presume that they don't understand the complexity of today's issues or concerns when they are the people who are closest to the problems that actually are closest to the solutions. And so, again, I think there's a lot that can be learned from how we saw Reverend Jackson move and the things that he was able to do despite any of the controversies and challenges in which he found himself.
Do you think that beyond this analysis, which we often hear, and which I do believe is true, that if it wasn't for Jesse Jackson, there is no Barack Obama, how do you see his impact on the more progressive end of the spectrum politically, right? We can say, well, Obama was a centrist. He,
sure.
Reverend Jackson opened the door for him, kind of set a pattern for how to build a campaign using the principles of community organizers. But what about on the progressive end of the spectrum?
Well, I mean, I think even taking a community organizing angle was extremely progressive at the time in which he was running, right? That was returned to, right? And I think part of that is about the appeal less to the political bourgeoisie. And to be sure, right, we know that was a part of Obama's story as well. But that community organizing piece also manifested, I'm in New York City right now preparing to give a lecture in the recent run of Mayor Mamdani. Right? A sort of everyday person that was connected and rooted in community, that used community organizing in a strategic and useful way that also shaped his agenda. And so I think when we're talking about the types of policies and pushes that Reverend Jackson was having, even as like a shadow U.S. senator, right, was very much directly related to, the connections to organizers and to organizing. And so, again, we can't talk about one without talking about the other. And more importantly, right, that when we think about our elders and our ancestors, that there are so many things that they have had to navigate, so many doors that they have had to break down, that even make possible a future in which we can see ourselves being a part of the, particular version of the political apparatus. But again, what I think becomes most instructive is that we don't lose sight or become disconnected or detached from that, because as we've seen in this moment, right, as power continues to move, all of us may be reduced, to the least and most marginal position of our identities under this particular type of administration. And so as politically engaged people, if we don't stay connected to community and we turn our back on those who we call neighbor, right, we will not have a place to call home.
Yeah, that's a great
And I think that, again, is something that's so important to think about Reverend Jackson's legacy in this moment.
I mean, to me, I'm laughing because President Trump put out a statement on Truth Social, and I can't think of another civil rights leader off the top of my head that our mercurial president would say something even marginally complimentary about. And to me, that also speaks to the charisma and ability to relate to anyone that the Reverend Jackson had. It's like he could see anyone's humanity and he was able to sort of talk to their higher self.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that, many of us, again, can learn from, especially in these really challenging times. Yeah,
it's well said. Dr. Charles H.F. Davis III is my guest, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Thanks for starting your morning off with a voice that speaks truth to power and the powerless, getting to the heart of what matters most in our community. This is where authentic conversation meets real action. From breaking news and politics to culture and community solutions, this is where you hear perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. This is where we come together, get informed, and make change happen. You're inside First Things First with Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Good morning, sunshine. You make my day.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
We've got to laugh the pain away.
Hey, KBLA delegation, happy Black History Month. Around here, we celebrate our culture, our community, and our contributions daily. But this year, as we observe the 100th anniversary of Black History Month celebrations, we're excited about our annual KBLA Talk 1580 Black History Month Luncheon, honoring comedy greats. On Thursday, February 26th at the Grammy Museum in downtown LA, we're toasting D.L. Hughley, Melanie Camacho, Earthquake, Munell, Dion Cole, and Martin Lawrence with a surprise guest appearance. A limited number of individual tickets for the luncheon remain, so now would be a good time to head to KBLA1580.com to secure one for yourself. That's KBLA1580.com. A little laughter goes a long way, especially in times like these. So come, join us for our annual KBLA Talk 1580 Black History Month Luncheon, Thursday, February 26th at the Grammy Museum. Again, tickets are available right now at KBLA1580.com.
Well, I hang around my boy. He been married for 6 years. Videotaped his wedding day, never watched it. Now and every day he watch it every day, but he watch it in reverse. Because he said he loves seeing himself take that ring back off of that finger. Walking back down that aisle, just waving at her ugly mother down the church. Getting back in the limo, back at the bachelor party. Look how happy I was.
KBLA Talk 1580 thanks LA City Council members Curran D. Price Jr. and Heather Hutt for being the presenting sponsors at this year's Black History Month Luncheon. Honoring excellence, resilience, and achievement, we're KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you drowning in IRS tax debt? Angela was. She called Civic Tax Relief and saved over $80,000. Felicia was having health problems, got behind on her taxes, interest and penalties were adding up. She called Civic Tax Relief and saved over $15,000. Civic Tax Relief is a professional tax negotiation firm that can protect you from the IRS. If you're getting collection letters, call Civic Tax Relief for a free consultation. They will go to work helping you discover all the relief programs you may qualify for free. James owed the IRS $37,000. Civic Tax Relief represented him against the IRS, and by the time everything was completed, he did not owe the IRS anything. If you are in trouble with the IRS, call Civic Tax Relief for your free consultation now. 800-200-2257. 800-200-2257. Get a free consultation and real tax relief. Call 800-200-2257. 800-200-2257.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
First things first, indeed, and we're glad you're making this your first thing. Dr. Charles H.F. Davis III is my guest, and of course, we originally set out to celebrate Black History Month, and Reverend Jesse Jackson certainly a part of that, so it's a blessing to have you here to put that in perspective as well. So let's go a little bit into the concept of Black History Month. One of my favorite Jesse Jackson moments, I saw him out in Compton. He was speaking to a crowd there, and he was complaining about Black History Month with no history. Black History Month without the history, that we just see like photos of Rosa Parks, but we don't really get meat with our Black history. And of course, the famous complaint is it's the shortest month of the year, and many folks just don't understand the origin. So let's talk a little bit about Black History Month, what it is, why we care, where it comes from.
Yeah, so Black History Month is one of the longest standing recognitions and celebrations in the Black community. Of course, started in 1926 as Negro History Week by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who is a very famous historian, most notably with regard to his work on the miseducation of the Negro, which is a seminal text I recommend anyone and everyone should read. But part of why Negro History Week was established as a week in February was because it fell between two already celebrated birthdays, that of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And in Negro History Week in particular, thinking about this historical void with regard to the representation and the recognition of Black contributions to humanity. And so in thinking about sort of why it's located in February, right, there's historical context that I think is always important. It's not just that it's the shortest month, but also to be sure that what began as Negro History Week, and I remember Baba Akili talking a bit about it in our Black media call, right, that even when he was a young person, that it was still Negro History Week. Because it actually wasn't until 1970 when Black students at Kent State University first recognized it as a month. and it was then begin to be celebrated across the entirety of the 28 days. It wasn't actually until 1976 that the federal government decided to also recognize what had already been celebrated, right, for almost 5 decades at that point. So I think this is important to just kind of situate how we think about why we are where we are and when we're there, and also that the thing that we have given to ourselves is nothing that anyone else can take away.
And I'm glad you said that, because there was a lot of speculation. The president signed the annual Black History Month declaration, I think around the 5th or something of February. And a lot of speculation was going on saying he won't sign it and that he's going to abolish Black History Month. But the president cannot abolish Black History Month, right?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's not a designated thing that has to be recognized by the government in order for us to recognize and celebrate it. And again, it went on for a better part of 50 years without the federal government's concern or worry about it. I think part of that, though, is thinking about the space that is taken up, say, in school curriculum and the shifts that have happened over time, in which we have said, okay, in February, we're going to take particular attention to thinking about Black history in certain ways, the way we adorn and decorate educational spaces for young people, Black young people in particular, right? That what he's attempting to do isn't simply an assault on a thing on which he cannot infringe, but a broader structural sort of attempt to take out the ways that this has already been institutionalized in various places across the country.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I have been reading that some teachers feel afraid to even put up Black History Month decorations because it would be seen as DEI.
Right, which is ludicrous, right? I mean, this country literally does not exist in the absence of Black people's contributions, as do many things around the world. So you can't tell me that we can talk about American history, and yet Black history is not also a part of that conversation any more than you say we want to talk about American literature, but we don't get to engage with the works of Octavia Butler or Langston Hughes.
Why are, I guess, your generation and younger saying Black Futures Month instead of Black History Month? What does that mean, or does that encompass Black history as well?
Yeah, so this has been an interesting sort of development over, the last decade or so. But I think part of it is that sometimes with history, we kind of get wrapped up in nostalgia, right? These sort of feel-good moments about particular versions of the history and which versions of that history get told, which figures we will decide to focus on, right? And so I think part of the challenge that always happens across generations is the extent to which we uplift the past at the expense of the present or the possibilities of the future, right? We use it as a metric or a barometer by which all things should be measured. And what we've seen as movements have continued to evolve, right? The strategies and tactics change. And although there may be things that are deeply helpful and instructive from the past, they may not fit into the present context. So what I partly see is this, which really should be, I think, encouraging, right? Young people taking a stand to be deliberately engaged in the political and educational project of what it means to think about the future, right? The not yet, the somewhere in advance of nowhere, from which they absolutely draw history. And we can see that in the work of folks with BLM Grassroots, with M4BL, the Movement for Black Lives, the Dream Defenders down in Florida, who had the Blacked Out History campaign, which has recently returned to talk about lesser-known Black history facts, much like our Black History Matters campaign. So I think we have to always know that they're in conversation, but that we can't hold on to the past so tightly that we are unwilling to cede leadership and opportunity to people in the present in order to chart our course toward a future.
Yeah, and I think it's also, for me, when I hear, especially reflecting on what you're saying right now, that it's also about allowing each generation to lead the way they lead. I remember the controversy when Black Lives Matter first started getting more widely known, that some of the more traditional civil rights leaders, especially those within the church, felt that they were too radical, too abrasive. And the pushback from young leaders was, we're not beholden to your respectability politics. So we think there is some correlation there between holding on to the past and this sort of nostalgia, as you put it, that can not leave room, not make space for young people to define their own movements and implement them in the ways they see fit, which is what young people have done throughout human history.
Right. I mean, I don't know any elder generation who has ever not told young people they're not doing something right. Right. And I'm kind of, in the sort of midlife where I'm starting to become a little bit of that person too. But I think what's helpful to understand, right, is like of that particular time, all of those things were also considered radical. And part of the nefarious way that Black history having become institutionalized, and particularly the legacy of Dr. King, right, is that sort of the white imagination has created a version of Dr. King that de-radicalizes him, right?
Right, right.
Right. And so I think that that's important for us to remember because, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, had a speech one time and he said that we are a nation committed to historical amnesia, right? Which means we're sort of forgetful and misunderstand the past, as if the past didn't have a bunch of foolishness in there too.
Right.
Right. Right. Or to suggest that what was going down with the Freedom Riders, right, in Jackson, Mississippi, was in some ways, not as radical as the things that people are doing now. I mean, I would actually make an argument in some cases, right? Some of what we're doing isn't actually as radical as the things that were happening in the past. Right. And so there's also some room to be left for the way that we've been absorbed into certain forms of doing political work that sort of take away the teeth of some of the more radical types of things that we could be doing to move things forward. So I think, again, it's just really important that we don't create sort of these levels of division when these things are actually deeply interconnected. Yeah. These are things that we can actually work through together.
I mean, it's an interesting point, too, because if you think about the stakes, are you more likely to get murdered on a freedom ride back then or, storming a freeway now? So, yeah.
Right, or just living your life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen any number of examples that you need not, quote unquote, be doing anything radical to be perceived as such.
Yeah. Yeah. So I say that because I've had conversations with a number of elders that don't quite have an understanding of Black futures and its place in that continuum that you're talking about. Of activism, of organizing, which at its best, I guess, does that Sankofa thing, looking back to go forward, draws on the victories and methodologies of the past, and yet is able to innovate and be bold and different.
Right. Well, I think when we hear the word future, we think that it is disconnected from other, sort of points in time, right? And what Dr. Cornell West, who's, a friend of our beloved BLM grassroots family, he says partly that we understand that time is only a present phenomenon, that the past is but a present memory, and the future is but a present expectation. So I think part of that is to understand that although we may interpret someone looking toward the future as a discard of the past, that's actually not what's happening, right? And so I think what it would do helpful for us is to think that, yeah, Dr. Martin Luther King had an imagined future, right? This is what his I Have a Dream speech was about, that Reverend Jackson had an imagined future.
That was Black futures, right, at the time.
Right, that was Black futures, that Octavia Butler's work, right, speaks so much to the idea of a future, one in which we are attempting to reconcile at this very moment as we engage with her work. Yeah. Right. So I think part of it is to not get, again, amnesic about the past or to get nostalgic about the past, but to know that we are always already thinking and engaging with the future, and we ought to be thoughtful and receptive to how young people have a particular version of the way that they see the world, in which the future is the place that they will have to live and inherit when many of us are long gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's well said. And we just have a minute here before news, traffic, and sports. But when I hear you say, nostalgia versus history, it reminds me of Reverend Jesse Jackson saying Black History Month without the history. Because nostalgia allows you to go, that was Rosa Parks. She sat on a bus. And not recognize that she was part of an organization and she was trained. She was part of an action. She wasn't just randomly, sitting on a bus.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. We're talking with Dr. Charles H.F. Davis. We're talking Black History Month. Black History Matters is a campaign he's currently working on. We'll hear about that when we come forward. You're invited in if you have a question for Dr. Davis or you want to yell at me, 800-920-1580, 800-920-1580. News, traffic, and sports, then all that only right here.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Michael Jordan is celebrating his first Daytona 500 win.
Great strategy by the team, and we gave ourselves a chance at the end, and look, I'm ecstatic.
Tyler Reddick took the checkered flag for Jordan's 2311 racing team, breaking through on the final lap for the organization's 9th NASCAR Cup victory. Reverend Al Sharpton is paying emotional tribute to his mentor, the late Reverend Jesse Jackson. Sharpton called Jackson a consequential and transformative leader who changed this nation and the world, saying Jackson kept the dream alive and taught young people from broken homes, including him, that their spirits were never broken. And Celtic star Jaylen Brown says he was targeted by Beverly Hills police after the officers shut down his All-Star Weekend event. Police say he needed a permit, but Brown insists it was a leadership panel at a reasonable hour, not a party. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Escape the confines of the city for the expansive beauty of the Santa Ynez Valley with a short 2-hour drive up the coast. Let Chumash Casino Resort be your destination getaway. Welcome to freedom. Go to chumashcasino.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The NBA All-Star break did not move LeBron any closer to making a decision about his future. The 41-year-old veteran in his NBA record 23rd season said he has no idea if this will be his final season with the Lakers or if he wants to jump into free agency and finish his career with another team. LeBron is in the final year of a 2-year deal with the Lakers that's paying him $52.6 million. Father Time is knocking on LeBron's door, and he hears those knocks, but there has not been a significant drop in LeBron's performance. Even though injuries this season have sidelined LeBron for 18 games, he's averaging 33 minutes, 22 points, 7.1 assists, and shooting 50% from the floor. He is still one of the NBA's marquee players. LeBron will certainly be quizzed again about his future after the season. The thing to keep on your radar is how different his answer might be. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With the Capital One Venture X card, you earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy. Plus, you get premium benefits at a collection of luxury hotels when you book on Capital One Travel. And with Venture X, you get access to over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. Open up a world of travel possibilities with the Capital One Venture X card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
With the new IHOP value menu, $6 is all it takes to go to your happy place, where stacks of pancakes with bacon and eggs are just $6 every day. French toast, sausage, and eggs are, you guessed it, $6. And fluffy omelets come with a side of pancakes and only cost $6. Go to your happy plates every day at IHOP. $7 in some locations. Available every day for a limited time at participating restaurants in the U.S. Hours may vary. No substitutions. Not valid with other discounts or promotions. Prices may vary.
It all comes down to this, folks.
Yep, the entire season is on the line.
But my throat has officially thrown in the towel. Sounds like you need Vicks VapoCool drops. They're max strength and vaporize sore throat pain.
Whoa! These VapoCool drops hit fast!
Speaking of fast, did you just see that play?
Yeah, he vaporized that ball.
That pun should have come with a penalty.
Vaporize sore throat pain with Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with the world. African Focus Incorporated is a community-based organization whose mission is to bring Africans and African Americans together, lead charitable initiatives on the motherland, and educate people from all walks of life on the beauty, legacy, and opportunity of Africa's 54 nations. And it's that time once again when African Focus is teaming up with KBLA Talk 1580 for our 8th annual African Focus Trailblazers Tour. Travel with us in 2026 when we're headed to the southern African nations of Zambia and Botswana for a historical, cultural, and vacation tour led by me, Dominique DePrima, Cultural Ambassador for African Focus Incorporated. Enjoy luxurious accommodations, conscious fellow travelers, shopping, adventures, cultural cultural tours, wildlife safaris, and a giant waterfall, one of the world's 7 wonders, along with a chance to be of service at an orphanage on the continent. Become an AFI trailblazer by exploring the motherland with a nonprofit organization that has members in Africa and America to help roll out the red carpet for you, and together we'll make a difference and have fun doing it. For more information, visit africanfocus.org or call 310-676-7300. That's 310-676-7300 or africanfocus.org. Whether it's stateside or exploring the diaspora, we're with you every step of the way. African Focus and KBLA Talk 1580. Come go with us.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
Dr. Charles H.F. Davis is my guest, and he is just one of our leading scholars as far as truly progressive and radical history. And it's great timing to have you on today. Just all of us can use some Black history in our lives right now, and also wonderful that you've been able to weigh in on Reverend Jackson. I want to ask you, there's a famous quote from Morgan Freeman where he says, he disparages the idea of a Black History Month, saying we don't need it, he doesn't celebrate it, he doesn't like it, it is American history. Many of us, myself included, have said, well, Black history is American history, but it's popular in certain circles to say abolish Black History Month. Why do we have, there's no White History Month is one argument, or why do we even need it? And yet, as the daughter of a Black scholar, I know that the one month of the year when he definitely was going to have work was February. And that work was important because it was unveiling and introducing Black history to new generations of students and regular people who hadn't been exposed to it. So do we still need it? Is it outdated? Is it obsolete?
So, there's so many different ways we could, have a conversation about this. I think on the one hand, and I want to address this sort of squarely, is this idea that we don't need Black History Month simply because it's American history. To me, is sort of a liberal talking point that assumes that America takes Black history seriously unto itself, right? That by integrating or subsuming it under the banner of American history, it will still have the same level of recognition and prominence. And again, to be sure, as Dr. Woodson stated, the reason it had to exist at all was the fact that Black history had been rendered to the margins of intellectual and public thought. Mm-hmm. And I think in an attempt to, sort of further subsume Black people and our history into the American political project is deeply problematic because we've seen what happens, right? By becoming institutionalized to a certain extent. And the federal government is the arbiter of deciding whether it's legitimate, right? Rather than it being a thing that community determines and dictates, right, as something that is substantive and something that matters. So I would sort of refute and reject that, in its entirety.
Yeah,
whenever also.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, whenever people tell me that we don't have a White History Month, I say every month is White History Month, because if you look at the way those classes are taught in school, it's always centers Europe and white America.
Yeah, it both does that, but it also has a sort of level of white revisionism, which is to say that the white imagination has decided to tell us a version of the story, right, which we're seeing with the moves that happen, say, in the textbooks that are decided primarily based on Texas schooling, right, in which we have now sort of configured this idea of slavery as some sort of form of indentured servitude, right, or something that was actually beneficial because it taught those who were enslaved some sort of skills that they could, then leverage in the public marketplace. That type of revisionism is exactly why they are threatened by the critical race theory tradition, right, because it tells us to challenge ahistoric perspectives and white revisionism to history, which is, again, why Black History Month is so indicative and so important. What I think we also want to be thoughtful about, right, is that Black History Month isn't some sort of perfunctory exercise in which scholars and other people are just going around to these campuses and other places to give otherwise empty speeches. And Dr. Woodson himself challenged this idea in 1950, saying that it was evident from numerous calls for orders during Negro History Week that schools and their administrators did not take the study of Negro history seriously. Right. And so part of what he's calling to, and Dr. Greg Carr at Howard University said the same thing, is that we need to think deliberately about the relationship between study and struggle and to take the study of Negroes and Negro history very seriously because it's so instructive for the nation as a whole. Everything that has happened to anyone in this country almost has always first happened to Black people.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well said. We're at 100 years of Black History Month this year. How do you see that milestone? Is that important? What does it really mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we have to celebrate and recognize these milestones, right? That we have yet another artifact of our ability to endure and our ability to persist and our ability to resist the many attempts to erase who it is that we are and the things that we've contributed to society. And so in that way, recognizing the 100 years is deeply, deeply important. But what I think it also is indicative of, right, are the people who made that possible. And not just those who have engaged in formal Black History Month programming or formal Black History curricula, but the everyday people, right? The grandmothers, the aunties, the uncles, the grandfathers, the other siblings who have made sure that our history is told not just in these formal domains, but in the oral tradition that we know so very well, right? The griots and the firekeepers of our society. And that's what I think is so important about reaching a 100-year milestone in anything, right? Is that we do not think that it's something that was made possible by institutions that have long not respected us, not treated us well, not cared for us, while we have still carried and cared for those stories that we tell generation to generation.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Maybe that's why some of us were sort of taken aback when Joe Biden made Juneteenth a national holiday, because we're used to doing things ourselves. And I don't know. I mean, I know people organized around that, but it wasn't at the top of a lot of folks' agendas.
Yeah, I mean, I think the national holiday conversation is parallel to the thing that we're talking about today, but there are always going to be limitations when, again, we have certain recognitions and institutionalizations from places that can do away with it at a moment's notice, right? And I think part of that then also allows for, as we know with Dr. King's, sort of latter sort of political commentary with regard to racism, capitalism, and militarism, right? So now that Juneteenth becomes this official holiday, capitalism is able to swoop in and then sell us our culture back to us, right? And I think that's something we have to be very cautious of what we make available for capitalist exploitation, usually by white companies and corporations, right? And this is why we have a longstanding boycott against Target at the moment, right? Who is still trying to pull people back in by having sort of like cultural elevation, despite what we've been very clear about with their rollback of DEI. And so I think we have to also be really cautious about, to the extent we need things to be institutionalized or recognized from places, again, that don't love us and will never love us.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a really good point because, we have this discussion every year about, well, should we be included in the Grammys? Should we care about the Oscars? We have the NAACP awards. We have the Soul Train awards. It may seem like a trivial example, but when you rely, it's like a conversation I had with a friend in hip hop. It's when we rely. It's just like relying on these platforms to get out our messages. When we rely on Instagram and YouTube, and X and Facebook, then that can be taken away from us. Our connection with our audience can be taken away from us, or our constituents or our activist base at any moment.
The part about self-determination sometimes gets lost in a lot of the conversation around what organizers do and what activism is about. But what we're fighting for is agency, which is to say we should have the option and have the choice that if we want to be considered for, Grammy nominations, that we should be able to. Now, whether that is wrapped up in our own self-worth and our legitimacy and validation as artists or creatives or whatever is a different conversation. But I think we should always have the option, because part of this is to understand that these types of credentialing institutions, be that the Grammys, be that colleges and universities, be that institutions of government, right, that these are resources, right, and that our exclusion from those resources limits our life-making possibilities.
Right.
Now, whether we decide to go to, Princeton instead of Howard University, although I would definitely argue go to Howard instead of Princeton, right, should be a matter of choice and should be based on the opportunities we want to see for our life and being in the best position to do those things well. And so I think that has to be thought about in consideration, that it doesn't have to be an either or, but when rubber meets the road, right, there's a certain thing that you can gain that will give you access, and there are other things that you can gain or garner that will make you whole. And I think that's part of the distinct separations between Black systems and institutions of recognition and the otherwise white validating gaze that we are often aspiring to gain access to.
Yep, it's well said. We're talking with Dr. Charles H.F. Davis III. Tell me about Black History Matters. What is that exactly? What are you doing, and where can we find it?
Yeah, so Black History Matters is a campaign we started about 6 years ago now with Black Lives Matter Grassroots as a part to broaden access to political education, particularly in the digital sphere. And so it's a digital campaign that also is co-committing with opportunities to do radio interviews like this, our Black media calls, other virtual webinars and things of that nature that want to elevate and celebrate Black political history in particular and lesser-known Black history facts. So we, for 28 days, go through either a historical figure or historical event that we want to focus our attention on. We have graphics that accompany summaries or captions that are written by scholars within our network, including in partnership with Scholars for Black Lives. And so this is the thing that has been running and is continuing, and we're really excited to share it and have folks engage with it online, which you can find on Instagram by going to BLM Grassroots on Instagram.
Yeah, and so let's talk about a couple of these folks. I think yesterday you had Christiane Marie Tabira.
Yes. So we started with Carter G. Woodson on the 1st, which is the thing that we always do. We also celebrate and recognize Frederick Douglass on the 14th, which is widely understood to be his birthday. Yesterday, we did a particular figure. And what I think is also important about this campaign, we think about Dr. Melina Abdullah, who's our friend, comrade, sister, mother, as a Pan-Africanist, right, that we have to think about Black history that is not limited to the United States. And so we wanted to highlight Black political figures in other parts of the world who have been part of various systems, including formal political systems. And so when we look at Christiane Tabira's work, particularly in the advocacy and writings, right? She was a scholar, still is a scholar very much so, with appointments in the United States and abroad. But one of the things that was seminal to her work was to get the nation of France to recognize the horrific crimes against humanity that was the institution of slavery and France's participation. So much so that not only did it have to make a public declaration about this, but it actually had to move school and university curriculum in light of recognizing that this was an atrocity and a crime against humanity, which is significant, right? Because this is a thing that the United States has not even done, despite being one of the greatest benefactors in the transatlantic slave trade. And so I think in focusing on that, right, we see that there are, again, connections between what's happening within the diaspora and things that are happening here.
Yeah, it's a moment in Black American politics where there is a push for division. And I think some of it is being generated by ops and people who are actually being paid to divide us from Africa, to divide us from the diaspora, from the Caribbean. But some of it is, I believe, a correct and righteous desire to honor the specific struggles and contributions of our ancestors, the Black people from the United States who became sort of a moral leadership for the world and became an inspiration to Africa, which is interesting. Your child is kidnapped and grows up to inspire you. And so I think there's two things happening at once, and that international perspective, which leads me again back to the Reverend Jackson, who was very clear, I believe, about how to have allies, how to have a rainbow coalition, but not lose the Blackness, not whitewash or beige wash the Blackness that was at leadership.
Right. I mean, that's the thing about white supremacy and anti-Blackness, right, is that it crowds out room for anyone else because it's an all or nothing game. And when you're rooted in community, you know that is not actually the case, right? That we know that we may need different focuses at different points or elevate different people who may be more vulnerable or proximal to harm and violence in certain moments. And I think that is a thing that we have to shift our thinking about, right? And not allow for that white supremacy and that internalized anti-Blackness to dictate that it has to be an all or nothing game. And that is certainly true of how we think about history and historical narratives, which is why you would have this false juxtaposition, right, between a quote-unquote white history or white version of history and Black history, as if they can and haven't always coexisted, even if we tell the stories differently from particular perspectives. So I think we just have to be thoughtful about what it means to ensure that we are not crowded out at the expense of someone else. And this is part of the challenge with the idea of diversity, right, at least in the sort of diversity apparatus as we've seen it, is that because of its institutionalization in many ways, diversity has come to mean anything but a focus on Black people, despite it originally being a proxy for race sort of broadly and Black people specifically. And so we do have to tread with caution, right, that even in places that are diverse, that are some version of a rainbow push coalition, that white supremacy and anti-Blackness are not creating space for everyone else at the table while making us be the people who have to serve or be on the menu.
Yeah, well said. Dr. Charles H.F. Davis is our guest. We're celebrating Black history kind of loud around here, and you're welcome to join in, 800-920-1580. We are KBLA, Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
Getting around LA doesn't have to cost a lot. Metro has fares that fit every budget. 20 free rides for qualified riders through the Life Fare program. Free passes for students with GoPass and affordable options for everyone in between. Wherever you're going, Metro's got you covered. Visit metro.net/fare programs. Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community, educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit casmpvolunteer.org.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Find a righteous rage and don't be afraid to say what you see. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
We are, and we're talking with Dr. Charles Davis. Before we get Charles Davis III, let him go back to his busy life of scholarly pursuits, teaching, writing, and publishing. Tell us how to follow and track your work, Dr. Davis. How can we keep up with the things? Obviously, we can watch Black History Matters at BLM Grassroots on Instagram, but where else might we look?
You can follow my work on my website, hfdavis.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at hfdavis, where I'll be posting more Black history commentary, as well as things related to abolition of policing on college and university campuses and the imagined futures that we have for ourselves within and beyond the academy.
And Dr. Davis, I notice in your Black History Matters, you do center a lot of women, and it feels intentional.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely intentional, right? When we talk about the history of Black people, so often patriarchy is the thing that governs and circumscribes the stories that we tell. And so it's really intentional for us, especially in this moment when we think about Black political struggle and all the work that Black women and Black queer folks have done historically that are doing contemporarily, that we highlight and center those stories that often get rendered to the margins. And so we can think about folks that we highlighted in the past, of course, your Bayard Rustins, right, who was the premier organizer of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And then we want to make sure that these are things that are not pushed to the recesses, that we understand how intimate and connected in the architecture of Black freedom struggles have been these connections. community. So we are really intentional about wanting to ensure that those folks are centered, as well as some of the more traditional and recognized people within that process.
Yeah, today is the birthday of Huey P. Newton. Tomorrow is the birthday of Audre Lorde. Speaking of people that we don't often see on, beer poster, Black History Month posters, or, bank Black History Month posters, want to say a word about either of those two historical figures?
Yeah, Huey P. Newton is, I think, so instrumental to so many of us in the political struggle. I talk often about him in my classes, and specifically about his founding of the Black Panther Party while he was a student at Merritt Junior College along with Bobby Seale. And so I think that's obviously going to be deeply important to how we think about what's happening with regard to the types of strategies and tactics that we may have to undertake as we continue to move in this political world. And Audre Lorde, what cannot be said about the genius that is Audre Lorde. We just actually highlighted the Combahee River Collective and the Combahee River Raid as a part of our campaign this year, and particularly the work, again, of Black feminists, that it brought a really important way of thinking that isn't just about our understanding, recognition, and elevation of Black women, but also the detriments and challenges of patriarchy and toxic masculinity to Black men that hurts all of us in the community.
Yeah, well, let's talk. We just have a couple minutes here, but let's talk a little bit about the Combahee River Collective, because we hear about Harriet Tubman, but a lot of people aren't familiar with that history.
Yeah, so the Combahee River Collective was a group of Black feminists and Black lesbians in Boston, Massachusetts in 1974. Best known for the Combahee River Collective statement, which I encourage folks to look up and read. But the document is one of the earliest explorations of the intersection of multiple oppressions, including racism, sexism, and heterosexism. And so for the first time in history, Black women were openly and unapologetically communicating their sexual orientations in the midst of their social justice work and no longer trading their silence for permission to engage in political struggle. So this is one of the hallmark moments that sort of moves just, discourse scholarly in a particularly different direction, but also feminist discourse in a way that recognizes that when folks say things like, this is for all women, but then does not take into account the multiple marginalities that many women and Black women in particular have. When we cite the work of folks like Kimberly Crenshaw and Patricia Hill Collins, that it builds out of the work of the Combahee River Collective and the work of Dr. Brittany Cooper with the Crunk Feminist Collective. And so it's just really important that we, again, recognize and honor those contributions and how it's forever changed the way that we think about and how we do politics.
We just have a couple minutes left here, Dr. Charles H.F. Davis, and I want to, because we just lost Reverend Jesse Jackson, someone points out in the chat that they think it is fitting that he would have his transition during Black History Month. What would you say to students in your class about Reverend Jesse Jackson if you were teaching today?
So I'm actually teaching tomorrow, and it is now a thing that I need to think seriously about. But I think, one of the things that I would say to students about Reverend Jackson and sort of his work, right, because I'm actually teaching an activism course this semester, is that Reverend Jackson's engagement with the political process didn't start by running for political office, right? It started working as an everyday organizer, working with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and Dr. King, and that is so important for us to remember, right, that what it means to actually be engaged politically is about being in community. It's not about being an individual. It's not being about made into an exception, right? It's to be someone who stands alone and separately because we believe in rugged American individualism, and that if we take the best of what we understand about Reverend Jackson's legacy, then it serves as a very great measure to how we might think about our own work, not just in terms of the successes, but also some of the challenges and pitfalls as we all navigate this particular moment of uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a very good point. It's so easy to be personality-centered or celebrity-centered. And although Reverend Jesse Jackson was wildly charismatic and a powerful speaker, he was really clear on collective action and community organizing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Dr. Charles H.F. Davis, we got just about 30 seconds here. What would you like to leave us with this Fat Tuesday morning?
I'll reiterate the point that we talked about earlier, that yes, although Black history is absolutely American history, that American history is often not honest about itself, and that Black history is here to provide a corrective action and a pedagogical intervention to ensure that what we understand about the past can chart our course toward a more liberatory future.
So well said. I feel like we need to just clip that and play it over and over again. Dr. Charles H.F. Davis, thank you so much for joining this morning. It's much appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me.
Author and music historian Dr. Ricky Vincent joins us next. We are deep in this Black history in honor of Jesse Jackson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Michael Jordan is celebrating his first Daytona 500 win.
Great strategy by the team, and we gave ourselves a chance at the end, and look, I'm ecstatic.
Tyler Reddick took the checkered flag for Jordan's 2311 racing team, breaking through on the final lap for the organization's 9th NASCAR Cup victory. Reverend Al Sharpton is paying emotional tribute to his mentor, the late Reverend Jesse Jackson. Sharpton called Jackson a consequential and transformative leader who changed this nation and the world, saying Jackson kept the dream alive and taught young people from broken homes, including him, that their spirits were never broken. And Celtic star Jaylen Brown says he was targeted by Beverly Hills police after the officers shut down his All-Star Weekend event. Police say he needed a permit, but Brown insists it was a leadership panel at a reasonable hour, not a party. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Escape the confines of the city for the expansive beauty of the Santa Ynez Valley with a short 2-hour drive up the coast. Let Chumash Casino Resort be your destination getaway. Welcome to freedom. Go to chumashcasino.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The NBA All-Star break did not move LeBron any closer to making a decision about his future. The 41-year-old veteran, in his NBA record 23rd season, said he has no idea if this will be his final season with the Lakers or if he wants to jump into free agency and finish his career with another team. LeBron is in the final year of a 2-year deal with the Lakers that's paying him $52.6 million. Father Time is knocking on LeBron's door, and he hears those knocks, but there has not been a significant drop in LeBron's performance. Even though injuries this season have sidelined LeBron for 18 games, he's averaging 33 minutes, 22 points, 7.1 assists, and shooting 50%